For the past few days, talks about Smash Ultimate without DLC have been on everyone's mind. Twitter timelines are full with the locals like Shockwave banning some or even all of the DLC characters for one event each week. In today's video, let's pretend Fighters Pass 1 and 2 never happened. How would the meta look like? Let's first have a quick look at which characters we would lose. From Fighters Pass 1 we would lose Piranha Plant. Not sure if she was even part of the Fighters Pass, but she is definitely DLC. No Joker, no Hero, no Banjo, no Terry and no Violet. And for Fighters Pass 2 it is Min Min, Steve, Sephiroth, Aegis, Kazuya and lastly Sora. So these are all the fighters we would end up not having on our roster. And of course the Smash 4 DLCs are not part of this. With all these characters not in existence, other characters that lose badly to them would of course rise on our tier lists, and some that do well against the DLCs would most likely rank lower. I personally think Rob, Wolf and also Palutena, despite the recent nerfs, would be one of the best characters in the game again. Kinda like they were pre-DLC. But let's take this one step further and have a look at the current top players and how the characters they play would most likely change. Because the PGRU version 3 is already kinda outdated, at least in my opinion, I'ma take the Ludwig Invitational seeding of the top 15 seeds as my draft. Our list therefore starts with Zomba. Zomba would of course still play Rob, and I think he would even do slightly better than he does now. I saw him lose to Steve and Aegis quite a lot recently, and with them gone I think he would benefit. Then Cosmos. Cosmos has pretty much put all eggs in one basket and he's solo maining Aegis now. So he would take quite the hit. Also, I often hear people saying how he is carried, despite the fact that there aren't many Aegis mains at the top except for him. Now, I'm not saying I don't see the point these people are making, but I think he would still do well with Inkling and Corrin most likely. For some reason I think that without the Fighters Pass characters and him sticking with Inkling from the game's release until now, he would maybe even do just as good. I feel like Inkling does quite well versus most of the characters that would be prominent in this meta. Next we have Meister. Meister would obviously still play his well-known Game & Watch. He remained faithful to his 2D character since Smash 4 and I don't see this changing anytime soon. In a world without DLC, I actually think Meister would do even better. If you remember the early days of Ultimate, where some people were thinking about Game & Watch being one of the best characters, it was due to Meister's success. And with characters like Aegis, Sephiroth and Steve out of the picture, matchups that do give Meister a hard time would be gone. I don't think he would do worse than he does now, and also we wouldn't have to see him pick Sora and Grants again. Up next is Tweek. Tweek has fiddled around with quite a lot of characters in Ultimate's lifespan so far, but it seems like he has really fallen in love with Diddy ever since the pandemic. However, if DLC never happened, I could see him sticking to PT and Wario. I think his Diddy mostly came into existence because of him losing the Evo Grants to Leo, and he needed an answer to his Joker. Of course, the pandemic still happened and maybe he would have invested his time into another character like Diddy anyways. Just like Tweek, the boss has trained his Min Min during the pandemic. And he has also seen quite a lot of success in some matchups and versus some players, most notably of course MK Leo. Leo, however, has made it his routine to take Joker against him ever since his loss at Low Tide City. Of course, without DLC there would be no Joker counter pick and no Min Min to begin with, and also the sporadic Sora picks of the boss wouldn't happen, so I think the boss would stick to Rosa and Olimar like he does now, and maybe he would play some Palutena here and there, but I doubt it. On number 10 we got Sonix. Sonix is someone who I don't think I have ever seen play another character than Sonic in an offline tournament setting. And not that I have seen him play other characters online either. And why would you when you main Sonic, right? I also think that he would do at least as good as he does now. There would be no Steve, who seems to give him some trouble online at least. And there will also be no Aegis, which can keep up with Sonic in terms of speed. So I think he would also do just as good as he does now. On number 9 we got Onan. Onan didn't really have any results, at least to my knowledge, that were as dominant as he is since the release of Steve. And in North America at least, he is the Steve nowadays. Without Fighters Pass 1 and 2 though, he would probably have to play his former mains Rob or Robin. I think he could still do quite well with Rob, but I don't think he would be where he is now. After Onan we have Spargo, another very young player. Spargo has played some Aegis, but it feels like they were never truly his main. And I think he kinda dropped them ever since he lost to Leo's Aegis at Smash World Tour. He's now only playing them in rare occasions, like against Sonic for example. So Spargo would very likely main Cloud and have an Inkling as his second. Since Spargo's rise was during and after the pandemic, it's really hard to imagine him versus Leo without DLC. Of course, Leo had some success versus Spargo with his Corrin, but I'm not sure if this would have been that way from the start. I think without DLC, Spargo would have maybe even been more of a threat to Leo's number 1 spot than he already is. Now we have our first and only European player on this list, Glutonny. Just like Sonix, Glutonny rarely takes out any other character at offline tourneys than his glorious Wario. So any other character is out of the picture. When it comes to DLC, except for maybe Steve, it isn't really the DLC characters that he struggles against. It's more so the Sonix, the Olimars, the Bayos, etc. that he struggles against. The more I think about it, he seems to perform somewhat the best against the DLC characters of all the players. He beats Cosmos, he beats Leo's Byleth, and he also seems to have adapted the Steve matchup recently. So I think without DLC, Gluto would do pretty much just as good as he does now. Then we have T. T of course has his Kazuya, but he's still mostly rapping the Pac-Man. So this wouldn't change. And in terms of results, I think he sometimes struggles versus Swordies like Cloud and Roy. Just like Gluto, I imagine that T would do just as good as he does now, maybe even a little bit better. Next up we have Kola, and Kola also isn't really playing any DLC characters. He occasionally plays Cloud, but largely sticks to the Roy. However, even though I don't think Kola wants these characters banned, I don't know, I do remember some Salt tweets, but not like actually ban wishes. Anyways, I think Kola despises the DLC characters from all of the top players the most. I mean, look at this man fighting versus Kazuya. Without DLC, I think Kola would be a much happier top player and do just as good. Now we have Riddles. And if you watched my last video, you know I'm not a big fan of Kazuya or Terry, but without DLC, I would maybe still love to watch Riddles. I can see him still playing Belmonts, which is a character I love watching, or maybe he would play other Shotos like Ken or Ryo, which again I don't enjoy watching, but of course the Roy could also be an option. When it comes to results, I may be biased, but I think Riddles wouldn't be as high on the list as he is now. I think he would be somewhere around the top 20 PGR mark, but who knows. Let's talk about MK Leo next. It was at Frostbite that he first pulled out the Byleth. And then, well, COVID started and he was off to streaming and playing online. And he came back as the Byleth main we know him as today. But of course we haven't forgotten his dominant Joker era pre-pandemic. Both these characters, however, are Fighting Pass 1 editions. So what characters would Leo play without DLC? Before the Joker, he had a lot of characters like Ike, Lucina, Wolf, Marth and Meta Knight. And lately he has also been playing some Corrin and even Rob. I think without DLC, but the pandemic still happening, Leo would have definitely gotten some other characters tournament ready. I think the Lucina would probably be his main, or maybe even Marth, and I think Corrin or Wolf would be there for some matchups. Since Leo was one of the best Clouds back in Smash 4, maybe the Cloud could have been an option as well. But of course, with Leo you never really know what he's up to. He has recently even been playing some Rob and also mentioned his Roy on Twitter, so maybe these characters would have been his choice to train during COVID. And you can't forget about his Meta Knight, who might help him as a counter pick versus Tweek Steady at least. I personally would have liked to see some more Ike from Leo though, but that's just me I guess. In terms of results, we just saw Leo winning the most stacked invitational in the most dominant fashion, dropping only one game. Obviously he did it with Byleth and Joker though, but I believe he would still be the #1 player even without his DLC characters. But I think some sets would have been a little bit closer, because Lucina for example doesn't really have this X factor that his current characters have, and that I feel like Leo does best with. Maybe the Marth with its tipper mechanic would fit him the best in this meta. Anyways, enough about Leo, let's talk a Kola. Kinda like Onan, a Kola wasn't really on anyone's map pre-Steve. However, I also think that a Kola didn't play much Smash before COVID. And maybe I'm wrong about that, but I just know that he was a Luigi player before Steve came out. And a lot like Onan, I don't think a Kola would be as dominant as he is now. However, I know that a Kola has beaten Kome with his DK, so maybe he would do some waves with a combination of Luigi and Donkey Kong or so. Predicting his results is really hard since we have so little information about him before Steve's release. And lastly, we have Light. Light, more so like Glutonny and Sonix, is a solo Fox main, and he's showing the world how good Fox really is. He does well versus both DLC and non-DLC characters, and without a doubt he would do at least as good as he does now. I even think slightly better without the Kazuyas in the way to stop him. Anyways, to end this video, would you prefer the Smash meta without DLC? I for one think that the Fighters Passes were a great way to keep the game fresh and get everyone hyped up again and again. Of course, some of the characters are annoying to fight, but as for now, I prefer the meta with all the DLC characters as both a competitor and viewer myself. As always, thanks for watching, see you in the next one, peace.